Welcome to Top 15 Evidences for LDS Leadership Deception. In this video, we'll explore instances where the leadership of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints has misled, obfuscated, or concealed the truth from its members and the public. By examining these examples, we aim to shed light on the discrepancies between the Church's teachings and historical realities. Evidence number 1. Caught by the Securities and Exchange Commission. In February 2023, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, LDS Church, faced significant legal repercussions when it was caught by the Securities and Exchange Commission, SEC, for creating multiple dummy companies to hide its substantial wealth. This incident has raised serious questions about the honesty and transparency of the Church's leadership. Background: the LDS Church, also known as the Mormon Church, has long been one of the wealthiest religious organizations in the world. For years, it has amassed a considerable investment portfolio. However, in an effort to avoid public scrutiny and potential backlash over the extent of its wealth, the Church devised a complex scheme to conceal its financial holdings. The SEC investigation. The SEC's investigation revealed that the LDS Church, through its investment arm Ensign Peak Advisors, created 13 shell companies. These dummy corporations were used to obscure the true size and nature of the Church's investment portfolio. Each shell company filed separate reports with the SEC, making it difficult to trace the holdings back to the Church. According to the SEC, this strategy allowed the Church to hide a significant portion of its wealth, which was estimated to be in the tens of billions of dollars. The Church's leadership reportedly believed that such secrecy was necessary to avoid potential negative perceptions and to maintain the focus on its religious mission. Legal and financial consequences. As a result of the SEC's findings, the LDS Church agreed to pay a $5 million settlement. This included a $4 million fine for Ensign Peak Advisors and a $1 million fine penalty for the Church itself. The agreement highlighted serious issues regarding transparency and accountability within the Church's financial practices. Implications for Church leadership. This incident has led to widespread criticism of the LDS Church's leadership. The use of dummy companies to hide the Church's wealth is a clear example of dishonesty and a breach of ethical standards. Such actions undermine the trust and faith of Church members and the public. Furthermore, the revelation has prompted calls for greater transparency in the Church's financial dealings. Church members have the right to know how their donations and tithes are being used, and the leadership should be held accountable for their actions. Conclusion. The SEC's investigation into the LDS Church's financial practices serves as a stark reminder of the importance of transparency and honesty in religious institutions. The use of dummy companies to hide substantial wealth not only damages the Church's reputation, but also raises fundamental questions about the integrity of its leadership. This incident will likely continue to impact the Church and its members for years to come, as calls for greater accountability and openness grow louder. Evidence number 2. Hiding historical documents. The Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, known as the LDS Church, has a long history of controlling access to its historical documents, often withholding or altering information that may be deemed controversial or damaging to its narrative. One of the most notable instances of this practice involves Joseph Fielding Smith's handling of the 1832 First Vision account. Additionally, the Church has withheld significant documents, such as the minutes of the Council of 50 and William Clayton's journal, raising serious concerns about transparency and historical accuracy. The 1832 First Vision account. In 1921, Joseph Fielding Smith was called as church historian. Somewhere along the way, he discovered a previously unknown account of Joseph Smith's first vision, written in 1832. This account, which predates the official 1838 version by 6 years, was found in a letter book belonging to Joseph Smith. It provided a different perspective on the vision, suggesting that Smith saw only Jesus Christ, rather than both the Father and the Son as described in the later account. Joseph Fielding Smith stated he saw the 1832 account as a peculiar account. Cut the 1832 account out of the letter book with a penknife and placed it in a private safe within the historian's office, effectively hiding it from public view. It remained hidden until rumors surfaced that a peculiar First Vision account existed, and in 1965 the account was taped back into the letter book, and the church authorized Paul Chesman to publish the details of the account in his BYU thesis, and the account was finally published. This deliberate suppression of a crucial historical document raises questions about the motives of church leaders in controlling the narrative of foundational events in Mormon history. Another example is the Council of 50 Minutes. The Council of 50 was a secretive organization established by Joseph Smith in 1844, intended to establish a theocratic government in preparation for the second coming of Christ. The minutes of the Council of 50 meetings provide invaluable insights into the early leadership and governance of the LDS Church. However, these documents were withheld from the public for over a century. It wasn't until 2016 that the LDS Church finally published the minutes of the Council of 50, following years of pressure from historians and church members seeking greater transparency. The delayed release of these documents has fueled speculation about what other significant historical records might still be hidden from public view. Our last example is William Clayton's journal. William Clayton, a close associate of Joseph Smith and Brigham Young, kept a detailed journal documenting many critical events in early church history. His writings are considered one of the most important primary sources for understanding the inner workings of the early LDS Church. Despite their historical significance, much of Clayton's journal remains unpublished and inaccessible to the public. The continued withholding of William Clayton's journal prevents a complete understanding of key historical events and decisions within the LDS Church. This lack of access has led to frustration among historians and church members alike, who argue that transparency is essential for an accurate and honest portrayal of church history. Former LDS Church historian Stephen Snow expressed his value of transparency, but in doing so tipped his hand that the church has always struggled with being transparent, and in fact continues to do so when he said, "My view is that being open about our history solves a whole lot more problems than it creates. We might not have all the answers, but if we are open and we now have pretty remarkable transparency, then I think in the long run that will serve us well." I think in the past there was a tendency to keep a lot of the records closed, or at least not give access to information. But the world has changed in the last generation with the access to information on the internet. We can't continue that pattern. I think we need to continue to be more open. Conclusion. The LDS Church's history of hiding and controlling access to crucial historical documents undermines the integrity and transparency of its historical narrative. The deliberate suppression of the 1832 First Vision account by Joseph Fielding Smith, the prolonged withholding of the Council of 50 Minutes, and the continued secrecy surrounding William Clayton's journal all serve as stark examples of this troubling practice. But please don't mistake this for a limited problem. The Church still withholds from the public numerous documents even to this day. These actions raise significant concerns about the honesty and accountability of church leaders, as well as the Church's commitment to providing a complete and accurate portrayal of its history. Number 3. Sleight of hand with conference talks. In October 1984, Ronald E. Pullman, a member of the First Quorum of the 70 of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, also known as the LDS Church, delivered a general conference talk entitled The Gospel and the Church. This talk, notable for its emphasis on the importance of personal revelation and a Christ-centered life, became the center of controversy due to significant post-conference alterations ordered by the Church's top leaders. The original talk. In his original address, Pullman stressed the importance of personal revelation and the need for individual members of the Church to develop a personal relationship with God. He highlighted the distinction between the gospel of Jesus Christ and the institutional church, urging members to follow the teachings of Jesus Christ and live a Christ-centered life. His message underscored that the Church should assist in one's spiritual journey rather than replace individual accountability and personal spiritual experiences. The revision. Following the conference, the church's leadership expressed dissatisfaction with Pullman's talk. They deemed it necessary to revise the message to better align with the church's established teachings and authority structure. Consequently, Pullman was instructed to re-record the talk in an empty conference center. The revised version contained significant changes, including the removal or alteration of key passages that emphasized personal revelation and the distinction between the gospel and the church. To ensure the altered talk appeared as if it had been delivered live during the conference, a cough track was added to the new recording. This revised version was then distributed on audio and video tapes as the official record of Pullman's address. The aftermath and controversy. The alterations to Pullman's talk did not go unnoticed. Many members of the church who had attended the original conference or listened to the live broadcast were aware of the differences between the original and revised versions. This discrepancy caused considerable controversy and criticism among some church members who felt that the edits were misleading and did not accurately represent Pullman's original message. Critics argued that the church's decision to alter the talk and distribute the revised version without transparency was a deceptive practice, undermining the integrity of General Conference addresses. They contended that such actions raised questions about the church's commitment to honesty and the free flow of information within its community. Other examples include Elder Boyd K. Packer's talk, To Young Men Only, in the priesthood session during the October 1976 General Conference, which was on the topic of masturbation, and was problematic for several reasons, has been entirely removed from the LDS Church's website. Elder Hartman Rector Jr. of the First Quorum of the 70, in his talk, Turning the Hearts, in the April 1981 General Conference, has the text of the talk missing several offensive teachings on homosexuality that still exist in the audio. Apostle Bruce R. McConkie's talk, 7 Deadly Heresies, which also includes a different text from the original talk. And these are just a few of the times that the LDS Church has removed, altered, and misrepresented the talks given by its leaders. Conclusion. The Ronald Pullman 1984 conference talk incident, as well as the others, serves as a striking example of the LDS Church's willingness to alter or suppress messages and distort the talks given from their original. The significant changes made to Pullman's original address, coupled with the covert manner in which the revised version was presented, highlight concerns about the Church's transparency and the authenticity of its public communications. This event remains a point of contention and a source of skepticism among members and observers, contributing to broader concerns about the Church's approach to managing its narrative and maintaining control over its teachings. Evidence number 4. Lying about the Mountain Meadows Massacre. The Mountain Meadows Massacre, which occurred in September 1857, is one of the darkest chapters in the history of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. A wagon train of immigrants traveling from Arkansas to California was attacked by a group of Mormon settlers and Paiute Native Americans in southern Utah. Over the course of several days, the immigrants were besieged, and eventually, most of them were slaughtered. Approximately 120 men, women, and children were killed, with only a handful of young children spared. Brigham Young's deception. While the massacre itself is a grievous stain on the Church's history, the focus here is on the dishonesty of Brigham Young, the president of the LDS Church at the time. By 1863, it was well known among church leaders that Mormon settlers, rather than Native Americans alone, were primarily responsible for the massacre. Despite this, Brigham Young delivered a speech on March 8, 1863, in the Salt Lake City Tabernacle, in which he falsely laid the blame solely on Native Americans. In his remarks, Young stated,
"They came into this territory when a company of emigrants were traveling on the south route to California. Nearly all of that company were destroyed by the Indians. That unfortunate affair has been laid to the charge of the whites."
Young further defended the Mormon settlers by claiming that accusations against them were unfounded and part of a broader campaign of hostility towards the Church.
To this day, they have not touched the matter, for fear the Mormons would be acquitted from the charge of having any hand in it, and our enemies would thus be deprived of a favorite topic to talk about when urging hostility against us.
The implications: Brigham Young's deliberate misrepresentation of the events at Mountain Meadows exemplifies a significant instance of dishonesty by a high-ranking LDS leader. By shifting the blame to Native Americans, Young sought to protect the church's reputation and avoid legal and social repercussions for its members. This act of deception has had lasting implications, contributing to a legacy of mistrust and controversy surrounding the LDS Church's handling of its history. Conclusion: the Mountain Meadows Massacre remains a tragic and painful episode in the history of the LDS Church. Brigham Young's 1863 speech, in which he falsely blamed Native Americans for the massacre, illustrates a profound example of dishonesty by a church leader. This incident highlights the lengths to which church leaders have gone to protect their institution, even at the cost of truth and transparency. Evidence number 5: lying to cover up racism. In the mid-20th century, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints faced increasing scrutiny regarding its policies and beliefs about race, particularly concerning African Americans. One prominent instance of the Church's efforts to misrepresent its views on race involves Joseph Fielding Smith, a senior apostle and later the Church's president, and his statements in Answers to Gospel Questions 4. The claim in Answers to Gospel Questions, Joseph Fielding Smith addresses a question about a reporter's claim that the LDS Church teaches that Negroes have inferior souls. The question references an article by Claire Booth Luce, which discusses potential political challenges for George Romney, a Mormon, due to the Church's racial beliefs. Smith's response includes the following assertion:
The Latter-day Saints, so commonly called Mormons, have no animosity towards the Negro. Neither have they described him as belonging to an inferior race. There are Negroes in the church who are respected and honored for their integrity and faithful devotion. The door into the church is open to all.
Smith further emphasizes that faithful African American members would be eligible for the same spiritual blessings as other members.
Therefore, if a Negro joins the church through the waters of baptism and is confirmed by the laying on of hands, and then he remains faithful and true to the teachings of the church, and in keeping the commandments the Lord has given, he will come forth in the first resurrection, and will enter the celestial kingdom of God.
Joseph Fielding Smith's claim that the LDS Church did not view African Americans as belonging to an inferior race is demonstrably false. Historical records and statements from church leaders reveal a long-standing belief in the racial inferiority of African Americans. For example, Brigham Young, the second president of the church, stated in 1852,
You see some classes of the human family that are black, uncouth, uncomely, disagreeable, and low in their habits, wild, and seemingly deprived of nearly all the blessings of the intelligence that is generally bestowed upon mankind.
Additionally, the church's policy at the time denied African Americans the priesthood and access to temple ordinances, which were considered essential for achieving the highest level of salvation. This policy remained in place until 1978, further demonstrating the church's institutional racism. Implications: Joseph Fielding Smith's misleading statements were an attempt to present the LDS Church in a more favorable light during a time of growing civil rights activism and social change. By denying the church's history of racist beliefs and practices, Smith sought to deflect criticism and avoid potential backlash. However, these denials only served to undermine the church's credibility and perpetuate mistrust among those who were aware of its true teachings and policies regarding race. The dissonance between Smith's public statements and the church's actual beliefs and practices exemplifies a significant instance of dishonesty by a high-ranking church leader. Conclusion: the LDS Church's history of racism is a well-documented and painful aspect of its past. Joseph Fielding Smith's attempts to misrepresent the church's views on race, as evidenced in Answers to Gospel Questions 4, highlight a clear instance of dishonesty aimed at covering up these problematic beliefs. This incident underscores the broader issue of the church's efforts to manage its public image at the expense of transparency and truth. Evidence 6. Using plagiarism as revelation. Joseph Smith, the founder of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, claimed to be a prophet who received revelations directly from God. One of his significant claims was the restoration of the Bible through the inspired version, also known as the Joseph Smith Translation, JST. However, Recent scholarship has revealed that Smith heavily plagiarized Adam Clarke's commentary, a contemporary Bible commentary, in creating this inspired translation. Joseph Smith asserted that the Bible had been corrupted over time, and that his translation work was guided by divine revelation to restore the original intent and meaning of the Scriptures. This claim positioned Smith as a conduit for God's Word and underscored the LDS belief in ongoing revelation through a modern prophet. Recent studies, acknowledged by Brigham Young University and other LDS scholars, have demonstrated extensive similarities between Joseph Smith's inspired version and Adam Clarke's commentary. Clarke was a respected Methodist theologian, whose commentary was widely available and influential in Smith's time. Smith not only borrowed heavily from Clarke's interpretations and explanations, but also incorporated Clarke's textual corrections and additions into his own translation work. The revelation of Joseph Smith's plagiarism raises significant ethical and doctrinal concerns within the LDS Church. It calls into question the authenticity of Smith's claim to divine inspiration in translating the Bible. Instead of receiving new revelation, Smith appears to have relied on the scholarly work of Adam Clarke without proper attribution or acknowledgement. This revelation challenges the LDS Church's narrative of Joseph Smith as a prophet uniquely empowered to restore lost truths and correct biblical errors. It suggests a pattern of presenting borrowed ideas as original revelation, misleading both church members and the broader public about the nature of Smith's prophetic abilities. Evidence number 7. Lying about lay clergy. The leadership of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints has long perpetuated a narrative of having a lay clergy, implying that its leaders serve without financial compensation. This narrative has been challenged by revelations about the substantial income and benefits received by LDS general authorities, which raises questions about transparency and honesty within the Church. The LDS Church has promoted the idea of a lay clergy, suggesting that its leaders serve purely out of devotion to their faith without financial remuneration. This narrative has been reinforced to church members, creating an impression of selfless service and sacrifice among its leadership. Contradictions and revelations. In 1985, Gordon B. Hinckley, then the second counselor in the first presidency, made a statement acknowledging that general authorities receive living allowances, which come from business income, not from the tithes of church members. However, he emphasized that these allowances were modest compared to compensation in other sectors. Despite this acknowledgement, specific details about the extent of compensation, benefits, and additional financial resources available to church leaders remain undisclosed. There are indications that LDS leaders have access to funds beyond their formal pay, such as escrow accounts or general accounts, which are not subject to public scrutiny. To this day, the LDS Church leadership continues to refuse disclosure regarding the full extent of their financial compensation and benefits. This lack of transparency extends to any additional financial accounts or resources from which church leaders may draw funds for personal expenses or other purposes. The discrepancy between the narrative of a lay clergy and the undisclosed financial arrangements of LDS general authorities raises significant ethical and trust issues. It suggests a pattern of misleading church members and the public about the financial realities of church leadership. The refusal to disclose such information undermines transparency and accountability within the organization. Evidence number 8. Leaders' highly embellished stories. Throughout the history of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, several leaders have been implicated in telling highly embellished or outright false stories, raising significant concerns about honesty and integrity among its leadership. 70 Paul H. Dunn, a former general authority of the LDS Church, gained popularity for his compelling and inspirational stories about his life and experiences. However, investigations later revealed that many of Dunn's stories were fabricated or exaggerated. These included tales of his military service and athletic achievements that were not substantiated by factual records. The Church faced criticism for not addressing these falsehoods sooner, and only moving Dunn to emeritus status after public pressure mounted. Apostle Jeffrey R. Holland has faced scrutiny for several instances of misleading statements and embellishments. Temple penalties. Holland falsely denied the existence of temple penalties to a BBC reporter, despite historical evidence to the contrary. Proposition 8. During the campaign against Proposition 8 in California, which sought to ban same-sex marriage, Holland claimed that the LDS Church did not contribute financially, not one red cent, contrary to documented evidence of significant church involvement. Church growth. Holland inaccurately stated that the church was experiencing double-digit stake creation every week, when in reality the growth rate was significantly lower.
We're in the midst of incredible growth, staggering growth in the church. It's the single biggest problem we have. It's the best problem we could have, but it's the biggest.
The First Presidency has issued the following statistical report concerning the growth and status of the church as of December 31st, 2014. As of December 31st, 2015. As of December 31st, 2016.
But a week ago Thursday, we created 15 stakes. And we're doing that más o menos every week, more or less. It might not be 15, but it's the week before it was 12. Sometimes it's 8 or whatever, and it'll be a little uneven. But the point is, I mean, we're talking double-digit stakes every week. And we'll be doing that. Missionaries, temples, everything. Everything we're doing is bigger than it's ever been done in the history of the world.
It is living lie upon lie that makes a man a hypocrite. As we cannot advance in the kingdom of heaven without a resurrection, so we cannot move into celestial realms without honesty. And those who choose to cheat and lie and deceive and misrepresent become his slaves.
We will not and cannot lead you astray.
Misrepresented story. Holland shared a story about a missionary that had to be retracted due to factual inaccuracies and problematic elements. President Russell M. Nelson, the current president of the LDS Church, has also faced criticism for embellishing stories. Nelson embellished a story about a plane flight that landed in Delta, Utah, suggesting divine intervention. He misrepresented an incident where he claimed to have been robbed in Mozambique. Nelson's story about a woman in a red hat had to be removed from a book before publication due to concerns about its accuracy. The pattern of LDS leaders embellishing stories or providing misleading information extends throughout church history. These instances highlight a troubling trend of leaders using embellished or false narratives to bolster faith and uphold the church's image, often at the expense of truth and transparency. Conclusion: the cases of Paul H. Dunn, Elder Jeffrey R. Holland, and President Russell M. Nelson illustrate instances where LDS leaders have been implicated in telling highly embellished or false stories. These incidents raise significant ethical questions about the honesty and integrity of church leaders, particularly in their roles as spiritual guides and representatives of a faith community. The continued scrutiny of these narratives underscores the importance of transparency and truthfulness in religious leadership. Evidence number 9. Elder Oaks's shocking dishonesty. On November 12, 2021, Dallin H. Oaks, a member of the First Presidency of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, addressed a community meeting at the University of Virginia. During a question and answer session, Elder Oaks was asked about his views and treatment of LGBT individuals over the course of his life. In his response, Elder Oaks denied that electroshock therapy had been used during his tenure as president of Brigham Young University, BYU, stating, "When I became president of BYU, that had been discontinued earlier, and it never went on under my administration." Contrary to Elder Oaks' statement, historical records and testimonies indicate that electroshock therapy was indeed administered at BYU during his presidency. This therapy was part of efforts to cure homosexuality, a practice that has since been widely discredited and condemned as harmful. Historical accounts. The practice of electroshock therapy as a treatment for homosexuality at BYU is documented in historical accounts and personal testimonies. This included efforts to change sexual orientation through aversion therapy techniques, which often included electroshock treatments. Evidence number 10. Denying Christ. In 1886, John Taylor, the president of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, received a revelation that he claimed was from Jesus Christ himself. This revelation addressed the practice of plural marriage, stating that it could not be discontinued. Here is an excerpt from the revelation.
My son John, you have asked me, concerning the new and everlasting covenant, how far it is binding upon my people. Thus saith the Lord, all commandments that I give must be obeyed by those calling themselves by my name, unless they are revoked by me, or by my authority, and how can I revoke an everlasting covenant? For I the Lord am everlasting, and my everlasting covenants cannot be abrogated nor done away with, but they stand forever. Nevertheless, I the Lord do not change, and my word, and my covenants, and my law do not. And as I have heretofore said, by my servant Joseph, all those who would enter into my glory, must, and shall obey my law. I have not revoked this law, nor will I, for it is everlasting, and those who will enter into my glory, must obey the conditions thereof, even so, Amen.
During the trial of John W. Taylor, Jr., son of President John Taylor, and an apostle himself in 1911, there was extensive discussion about this 1886 revelation. The trial transcripts reveal that the revelation was known within the leadership of the church, including figures like Heber J. Grant, A.W. Ivins, George Albert Smith, David O. McKay, and Joseph Fielding Smith. Joseph Fielding Smith, who was a future church president, acknowledged having a copy of the revelation in the church historian's office. The 1933 First Presidency Statement. Despite the acknowledgement and knowledge of the 1886 revelation within the church leadership, a significant denial occurred in 1933. The First Presidency, including Heber J. Grant, A.W. Evans, and J. Reuben Clark, Jr., along with Joseph Fielding Smith and David O. McKay and several others who were present at the trial of John Taylor's son, issued an official statement on June 17, 1933, which categorically denied the existence of the 1886 revelation in spite of their knowing firsthand that it was legitimate and existed. It is alleged that on September 26 to 27, 1886, President John Taylor received a revelation from the Lord. The purported text is given in publications circulated apparently by or at the instance of this organization, fundamentalists. As to this pretended revelation, it should be said that the archives of the church contain no such a revelation. The archives contain no record of any such a revelation, nor any evidence justifying a belief that any such a revelation was ever given. From the personal knowledge of some of us, from the uniform and common recollection of the presiding quorums of the church, from the absence in the church archives of any evidence whatsoever justifying any belief that such a revelation was given, we are justified in affirming that no such a revelation exists. Conclusion. The denial of the 1886 revelation by the First Presidency in 1933 effectively had the entire church leadership denying Christ and his revelation. The lying denial stands in stark contrast to the documented knowledge and acknowledgement of its existence within the church leadership. This incident raises questions about transparency and honesty in the historical representation of significant doctrinal matters within the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Evidence number 11. Perjurious Papyri. Joseph Smith and subsequent leaders of the LDS Church claimed that a collection of Egyptian papyri acquired in the 1830s contained the actual writings of Abraham, which Joseph Smith translated into the Book of Abraham. This assertion was foundational to the Church's teaching and the canonization of the Book of Abraham as Scripture. In 1835, Michael H. Chandler brought a collection of Egyptian artifacts, including several papyrus scrolls, to Kirtland, Ohio. Joseph Smith purchased these artifacts and claimed they contained writings of Abraham. Translation and publication. Joseph Smith translated these papyri and produced what is now known as the Book of Abraham. This text was canonized in 1880 as part of LDS Scripture. Starting in the late 19th century, Egyptologists began deciphering Egyptian hieroglyphs and examining the papyri. By the mid-20th century, it became evident that the papyri did not match Joseph Smith's translation, nor did they date to the time of Abraham. In 1967, the LDS Church acknowledged the discrepancy between Joseph Smith's translation and the actual content of the papyri. The Church has since revised its stance, suggesting the papyri may have served as an inspiration or catalyst for Joseph Smith's translation rather than being the literal writings of Abraham. Implications and faith perspective. Joseph Smith claimed, and the LDS Church perpetuated, that the Egyptian papyri used in the Book of Abraham translation was the very writings of Abraham, written by his own hand. The Church supported that line of thinking, even as Egyptologists have shared evidence and information that deeply damages the Orthodox view. Mormonism eventually changed that wording at the beginning of the Book of Abraham scripture and have seemingly abandoned the position and has suggested the papyri potentially served as a catalyst for the Book of Abraham, rather than be the Book of Abraham itself. Such leaves the idea of the papyri being the writings of Abraham, written by his own hand, as a hard reminder that Smith and the Church have continually claimed one thing, while the facts and historical documentation suggest another. Conclusion. The controversy surrounding the Book of Abraham and the Egyptian papyri highlights a significant discrepancy between Joseph Smith's claims and modern historical and Egyptological understanding. This issue continues to be a point of debate and reflection within the LDS Church, addressing the nature of translation, inspiration, and historical accuracy in relation to sacred texts. Evidence 12, the Strengthening Church Members Committee, also known as the SCMC. The Strengthening Church Members Committee is an internal organization within the LDS Church that monitors the activities and statements of church members. Officially, the SCMC's purpose is to protect the Church and its members from those who actively oppose its teachings and doctrines. However, the SCMC's methods and extent of surveillance have raised significant ethical and moral concerns. Several former members of the SCMC have either come forward or been caught, revealing that the committee engages in monitoring and collecting information on church members, especially those who express doubts or criticisms. This monitoring often involves infiltrating social media groups and online forums under false identities to gather intelligence on individuals who are questioning or criticizing the Church. These revelations indicate that the SCMC's activities are not limited to public statements, but extend into private conversations and social media interactions. This covert surveillance has led to accusations of spying and a lack of transparency, which many view as an infringement on personal privacy and a method to control and suppress dissent within the Church. This evidence highlights the lengths to which the LDS Church may go to maintain control over its narrative and to discourage and monitor dissent among its members. The existence and actions of the SCMC serve as a reminder of the potential for abuse of power within religious organizations and the impact it can have on personal freedom and privacy. Evidence 13. Sidestepping polygamy. The LDS Church has historically avoided discussing Joseph Smith's polygamous practices, despite the fact that he had relationships with approximately 33 women, including teenage girls and other men's wives. This avoidance extended to all official church manuals, talks, teachings, and correlated curriculum up until 2013. The Church's reluctance to address Smith's polygamy allowed it to selectively present stories involving these women without acknowledging their status as his plural wives, which can significantly change the context and understanding of these narratives. Thomas Marsh and the milk stripping story. The Church frequently recounts the story of Thomas Marsh, who left the Church after a dispute between his wife and another woman over milk strippings. What is often omitted is that the other woman was Lucinda Pendleton Morgan Harris, a plural wife of Joseph Smith at the time. Knowing that Lucinda was a plural wife of Smith's sheds light on why Smith and other leaders might have favored her in the argument. Mary Elizabeth Rollins Lightner. Mary Elizabeth is often praised for her bravery in saving the Book of Commandments from a mob. However, the Church's curriculum historically omitted that she was a plural wife of Joseph Smith. Additionally, Smith approached her when she was just 12 years old and told her that she would one day be his plural wife, a detail that profoundly affects the understanding of her story. Eliza R. Snow. Eliza is celebrated in the church for her contributions, including authoring several hymns. Nevertheless, the church's teachings have generally neglected to mention that she was also a plural wife of Joseph Smith. This omission leaves out a significant aspect of her life and her relationship with the founder of Mormonism. By avoiding these critical details, the church has effectively sidestepped the full truth about Joseph Smith's polygamy, creating a sanitized version of history that omits the complexities and ethical questions surrounding his relationships. This selective presentation has misled members about the true nature of Smith's life and the early practices of the church. Evidence 14. Misleading membership claims. In a general conference talk, Elder Quentin L. Cook stated, "Some have asserted that more members are leaving the church today and that there is more doubt and unbelief than in the past. This is simply not true. The Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints has never been stronger. The number of members removing their names from the records of the church has always been very small and is significantly less in recent years than in the past." However, this statement is misleading when compared to the data on LDS church membership and activity. While official membership numbers may show an increase, the growth rate has significantly slowed, and the number of active, participating members has declined in many areas. Independent surveys and studies have indicated that a considerable number of members have become inactive or have left the church altogether. Additionally, demographic data suggests a stagnation in membership growth, with fewer conversions and higher attrition rates among younger generations. The contrast between Elder Cook's statements and the actual membership data suggests a deliberate attempt to present a more favorable view of the church's current status. This discrepancy highlights the ongoing issues with transparency and honesty within the church's leadership regarding membership trends and challenges. Evidence 15. Lying for the Lord. The Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints has a history of prioritizing faith and loyalty over complete transparency and truth. Instances of deception, obfuscation, and selective disclosure by church leaders are numerous. Here are 3 examples where LDS leaders have justified or instructed members to practice dishonesty and deception. Boyd K. Packer's address on church history. In a 1981 talk, Apostle Boyd K. Packer stated, "There is a temptation for the writer or the teacher of church history to want to tell everything, whether it is worthy or faith-promoting or not. Some things that are true are not very useful. The Lord made it very clear that some things are to be taught selectively, and some things are to be given only to those who are worthy. It matters very much not only what we are told, but when we are told it. Be careful that you build faith rather than destroy it." Some historians write and speak as though the only ones to read or listen are mature, experienced historians. They write and speak to a very narrow audience. Unfortunately, many of the things they tell one another are not uplifting, go far beyond the audience they may have intended, and destroy faith. Dallin H. Oakes on reading church history. In his 1985 talk, Reading Church History at the CES Doctrine and Covenants Symposium, Elder Dallin H. Oakes said, "Balance is telling both sides. This is not the mission of official church literature or avowedly anti-Mormon literature. Neither has any responsibility to present both sides." Matthias Cowley's Justification for Deception. LDS Apostle Matthias Cowley stated, "We have always been taught that when the brethren were in a tight place, that it would not be amiss to lie to help them out." These examples highlight a culture within the LDS Church that sometimes condones and even encourages dishonesty if it serves to protect the faith and its leaders. This practice, often referred to as lying for the Lord, suggests that preserving the Church's image and maintaining the faith of its members can take precedence over complete honesty. Thank you for watching. Top 15 Evidences for LDS Leadership Deception. As we've seen, there are numerous instances where the leadership of the church has not been entirely forthcoming with the truth. This should encourage all of us to question everything, utilize our critical thinking skills, and scrutinize the information we receive. Ask yourself, how would I know if I have been lied to? Are things really as I have been taught? It's crucial to seek out multiple sources, examine evidence carefully, and be open to the possibility that the narratives we've been given might not always align with the facts. Your journey to understanding and truth is personal and powerful. Embrace it.